Hey, good afternoon to you. 406 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Congressman Mark Green joins us. We'll talk about how we get our borders back at 4:30. At 5 o'clock, Gabe Kaminsky with the Washington Examiner is here. We examine all of the left-wing dark money involved in rigging ballots across the country to prevent voters from having their choice for president this cycle. And E.J. Antoni, the economist, will join us at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The media very excited today that Joe Biden gave his first official campaign speech of the year in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. That is where, just moments ago, Joe Biden compared Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler and suggested that he is echoing the language of Nazi Germany, just to give you a taste of how this campaign's going to go.
Echoing the same exact language used in Nazi Germany. He proudly posts on social media the words that best describe his 2024 campaign, quote, revenge, quote, power, and quote, dictatorship. There's no confusion about who Trump is.
As soon as I heard him say that, I was like, I know that this is a lie. I went and I looked it up. It was on his Truth Social. It was a word cloud from a Daily Mail poll when it said the top result was what voters think is that Trump will be able to get revenge. That was the number one word. In the background, there's all these other random words that voters had, poll respondents had, and among them was dictatorship and whatever the other word is that he said. But meanwhile, I looked at Biden's word cloud. The big word was nothing. That's what voters think of Biden. They think that he'll literally bring nothing to the table should he be reelected. Oh, what a world. All right, joining us with a reaction to this speech now is Lynne Patton, senior advisor to former President Trump and a finance director for the Patriot Legal Defense Fund. Lynne, good to have you with us.
Hey, guys. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
What do you make of this? This is the opening salvo of the 2024 campaign for Joe Biden.
I mean, it's obvious that Biden is simply trying to distract the American voter by refusing to talk about how he's obviously devastated the American economy, worst inflation in U.S. history, decimated the southern border under his watch, and obviously made America less safe on the global stage. And the worst part about it is, like you said, the people he deems the greatest terrorist threat to democracy and our nation are the American people themselves, because over 75 million people voted for Trump. And now we know that a majority do not even think that the actions of January 6th rose to the level that Democrats have spent the last 3 years trying to paint them as. And I want to remind your listeners that Democrats actually said January 6th was worse than 9/11. Worse than 9/11. And, you know, I'm not trying to diminish what happened at the Capitol. I never would. But at the same time, you know, Americans have a constitutional right to a free and fair election, and Trump has always worked in his official capacity to ensure election integrity. To equate the peaceful speech at the ellipse and then, of course, the actions on 9/11 in New York, as a New Yorker myself, it's just it's vile. And it's a narrative that the American people aren't buying.
Well, they're clinging desperately to it, the left is, because right now they are removing Donald Trump from the ballot in multiple states across the country in a clear effort of ballot rigging. And Biden has the temerity to stand up today in Valley Forge and suggest that he's on the side of justice and the American way.
And that's the greatest irony, right, Vince? Because, you know, Biden is the real threat to democracy by weaponizing the Department of Justice, other government agencies, private and public sector, to go after not just the leading GOP candidate, but the leading presidential candidate by, according to many polls, in the general election. So who is truly interfering with democracy? And I want to remind your listeners that in terms of removing Trump's name from the ballot, you know, not only has Trump never been convicted of insurrection, he's never even been charged with insurrection. So, you know, I'm no lawyer, but we're confident that the Supreme Court will follow the legal decisions already made in countless other Supreme Court states that have summarily dismissed these frivolous challenges.
Yeah, but even if, you know, some left-wing prosecutor did come along, if Jack Smith was like, I'm charging him with insurrection, that's still by any reasonable person's count, wouldn't be a basis for removing a candidate from a ballot. The idea here is they have such a contempt for the voters and such a fear that the voters are going to choose somebody other than Biden that they work to remove Donald Trump as an option entirely. It's not an attack on Trump. It's an attack on the voters themselves.
That's right. And Biden and Trump has no problem whatsoever with both names being on the ballot. Let the American people decide. But the reason why they can't do this, as we know, is because things were better with Trump. You know, Americans were richer with Trump. Americans were safer with Trump. Americans were stronger internationally with Trump. And the Democrats and Biden know that there's no way they can run on their actual agenda.
Yes.
So they have to smear, obviously, the greatest threat of all, which is Donald Trump, not democracy.
Yeah, I mean, there's something, I mean, not just something, but this is all very dark and dangerous, what we're seeing from Biden. You know, Biden stands in front of the American flag today at Valley Forge and claims that he's on the side of democracy. As you and I have pointed out, you know, his party is actively removing his political opponent from these ballots, but also they've now imprisoned thousands of the people who did not vote for Joe Biden in the last election. They've also arrested and charged his political opponent, his signature political opponent, Donald Trump, now on multiple occasions. So what is it, 90-something charges so far? They are using every tool at their disposal to try and crush this guy because they're upset about the chances that he comes back to the White House.
Well, that's right. And their goal is obviously to intimidate and persecute and bankrupt not only Donald Trump, but those of us who work for him, past, present, and future, so that Trump in the end is left destitute, bankrupt, and politically broken, spiritually broken, monetarily broken, and politically broken. I mean, and that is their goal. They want to leave this man with nothing and nobody. So they're arresting his bodyguard. They're arresting, or indicting his bodyguard, indicting, the head of maintenance at Mar-a-Lago, because they don't want people to think they're safe just by simply taking a job with this man. And I've just never seen anything like it. You know, I don't know if your listeners know, but I've been with the president for about 16 years. I started off as a personal assistant in 2008, 2007. And, I was with them before they went into politics. And, I'm sure I'll be with them after they leave politics. But at the end of the day, I've seen with my own eyes a front row seat to how this family was embraced, truly endeared by, Hollywood, the left wing, Black America, Hispanic America. And as soon as he came down that golden escalator and announced he was running for president, the phone started ringing off the hook. All the contracts that were canceled, all of the, business dealings. This man does not need to do this. He could have just sat back and enjoyed his life like many people would have, golfed in one of his 18 properties, golf courses, stayed in one of his 20 hotels and lived a great life at his, as they want to say, $18 million compound in Palm Beach called Mar-a-Lago, which we all know is a ridiculous estimate price for that place. But he didn't. He recognized that this country needed him. He stepped up. And because of that, he's lost almost everything. In fact, he's the only modern-day president who's ever left office poorer than he went in.
I know, and it's amazing, too. By the way, just to remind people, he donated 100% of his income from his time as president of the United States back to the federal government, to various agencies within the federal government.
That's right.
And
also the profits from his D.C. hotel. Anytime a foreign entity stayed there.
Okay, let me pause on this for a moment. I'm glad you brought that up, because this week I saw a piece in the Wall Street Journal. It's a couple of other places too. They're alleging, it's Jamie Raskin and company. They're all saying that, Donald Trump made millions of dollars from foreigners while he was president of the United States. And they're kicking this dirt up in the air. And obviously what this is, to any observer who can rub two brain cells together, is an excuse for Hunter Biden making millions of dollars in order to sell access to his family. That's what that is. But you just laid out. You just laid out, Lynn, an essential element here, which is, and I thought of this too. I was like, as soon as I read this story, I'm like, wait a second, I know this. But if he made money from these hotels, which he did, he donated it to the Treasury, didn't he?
Yes, very publicly, too, by the way. And the checks are documented, and so is the paper trail. You know, not once. And in fact, I used to work and run Eric Trump's charity for St. Jude. He shut that down because we never wanted to be accused of selling access to the president or his family in exchange for charitable contributions. Can you say the same about the Clinton Foundation? No, because Clinton Foundation donations dropped 100% when he left office. For them to accuse us of what they're basically doing, because we now know there's a direct paper trail and for China and Hunter Biden's business dealings back to the big guy, so to speak, with payments made through his brother, through other family members, back to Joe Biden. And those things will come to light. And speaking of the Trump Hotel, I was telling the story this morning. One of the sole conditions that Donald Trump forced upon the new buyers, because at the end of the day, it wasn't even worth holding on to the D.C. hotel, even though it was one of his greatest crown jewels in his portfolio. He forced the new owners, the investors from Miami, to keep every single Trump D.C. employee on their payroll when they took over that property, from the chambermaids to the valets to the concierges to the bartenders. They had to keep everyone. These are the kinds of stories that you just don't hear in the mainstream media that I want to make sure people know about my boss, because as a black female, a minority female, I get asked all the time, how can you work for such a racist, sexist man all the time? And I'm just like that because that's not who he is. That's who the media wants you to think he is. But I've seen this man personally help out everybody and ensure that all of his employees are taken care of. In fact, a year ago, I asked Eric Trump himself. I said, why don't you just relocate and incorporate the Trump organization in Florida? I mean, you could still legally and freely continue operations without biased and baseless investigations by AGs like Letitia James, who literally campaigned on taking Trump down before they read one document or interviewed one person. And you know what Eric Trump said to me? He goes, because not everybody would be able to relocate their families down there, Lynn. So we can't, and we won't. And so, you know, that's the family I've known for nearly 2 decades. And I get emotional because the Trump family would rather subject themselves to bogus lawsuits and millions of dollars in legal fees by staying in New York State rather than disrupt even one family that works for them. And that's the Trump family that I know.
Lynn,
they've lost billions.
Lynn,
tangible properties, branding, products, award-winning television shows, and more, just to try to save this country and give back to the American voter. And this is the price they're paying.
Meanwhile, as you pointed out, the Biden administration has arrested the maintenance workers at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Can you give me a sense? Since you've known Donald Trump for so long and you've worked with him for so long, at what point did you realize that this was not just your sort of run-of-the-mill political fight, and that the left was out for blood, that there was something much darker going on here?
Well, it is interesting because I remember the exact day that we realized that fake news was no longer our friend. In the first campaign, Don Jr. had given a radio interview, actually, like I'm doing now, to an outlet in Utah, I believe. And, you know, it was one of those morning shows where there's maybe 4 or 5 hosts, and everybody has those, you know, no offense, but like crazy morning radio show voices, and it's hard to distinguish who is who. And so we had vetted the program, and Don's giving the interview, and things are going well. Turns out there was somebody in the studio who has a radio show in the afternoon who was just supposed to be there watching and listening, not actually engaging. But they took it upon themselves to ask a question of Don while he was in the middle of this interview with other people. And Don answered it and went on his merry way. And we woke up the next morning, and there was an article on the cover of the New York Post that said, Don Jr. gives interview with white supremacist radio host. And we were like, what are they talking about? White supremacist radio host? When? You know, and come to find out, the person who was in the studio standing against the wall who asked that question and chimed in unbeknownst to us, had, hosted what some people are considered to be a controversial radio show that we knew nothing about. And at that moment, I realized, the media and Democrats don't care about the truth. They just want to paint a narrative to take out their political opponent and their greatest threat. And at the time, Trump was the greatest threat. We were leading in every poll. He had his family, Eric, Don, and Ivanka, just, dividing and conquering and kicking butt all over the country on his behalf. And they knew that they were up against a machine, and Trump took down 17 formidable Republican primary candidates, we all remember, with Little Marco and what was it, Low Energy Jeb and Lion's Head, like all these things. And, the most brilliant marketing I've ever seen. But that to me was kind of the moment where we realized, hey, the press that we used to know and love, that used to write glowing articles about the Trump family and everything they did or touched, is now just flat out making stuff up.
Yeah, exactly. And that, by the way, that kind of story is like the hackiest possible thing you could do, which is because you're not assessing Don Jr.'s views at all. You're saying he had a conversation with somebody else who has bad views, and therefore he's bad.
Correct.
It's like the craziest thing.
The headline was exactly what they wanted, which is, implies that Don approved giving an interview to a quote unquote white supremacist.
Lunacy. Just lunacy. And that was child's play compared to all the other stuff they did next. Hey, Lynne Patton.
I wish we could go back to those problems.
I know, those were the easy days. Lynne Patton, thank you so much for your time. We've got to talk to you again soon. Thank you very much.
You're the best.
Good afternoon to you. 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today from the Washington Examiner, Gabe Kaminsky is here at 5 o'clock. We'll talk to him about the left-wing dark money efforts to rig ballots nationwide and prevent Donald Trump's name from appearing in front of voters. And E.J. Antoni is here. We'll talk the economy with him at 5:30. New jobs numbers today, what they really mean. And then you'll be able to join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The DHS Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, was on Fox News last night, sitting with special report host Brett Baer, who points out, the illegal immigration problem, kind of out of control. Here's how Mayorkas explained it.
These numbers are historic. There's 8 Rose Bowls full of illegal immigrants that came across the border just since October 1st, Mr. Secretary.
Brett, the numbers are historic. The numbers are extraordinarily large. This is something that is not specific to the United States' southern border. This is something that we are seeing throughout the hemisphere and throughout the world. We have increase in authoritarian regimes. We have more extreme weather events that are driving people from their homes. We have poverty. And America is proving to be prosperous with more than 8 million jobs that need to be filled. We recovered from the COVID pandemic more rapidly than any other country.
You get the sense he's saying literally anything he can, like just trying to see what sticks to the wall. Extreme weather events? I don't think so. Illegals, when they're crossing the border, they're not saying it was too hot where they came from. They're saying, thanks, Joe Biden. For more on this, I want to bring in Congressman Mark Green now. The congressman represents Tennessee's 7th Congressional District, and he was on the border this week. Got to see it firsthand. Congressman, good to have you with us, sir.
Yeah, Vince, thanks for having me on.
What is going on with Alejandro Mayorkas? I see that that the House is readying this impeachment process. Is it likely to take place next week?
Well, yeah, I'm the chairman of the committee that's doing it, and we've led a 5-phase investigation. I think you and I have talked about that before when I've been on the show. The point of that was just educate the American people and get the furor up, and boy, is it up. I mean, even Democrats across the country are pissed off. Look, the guy has subverted the laws of Congress. He has basically refused to follow edicts from court rulings that have said you must enforce the law. He is lying to Congress and has lied to Congress. This is his woke immigration agenda being forced on America, contrary to the laws of the country, that have resulted in the death of Americans, massive fentanyl, cartels spreading their criminal networks throughout the country, terrorists with basically a full open border. They can just come right on in. It's unconscionable. He needs to go. Our first hearing of his impeachment is next Wednesday.
How do you address this excuse that is not unique to America? It's happening all over the world. We're just experiencing the same phenomenon.
It's absolutely absurd, and yes, we have. I mean, we will again. Right now, no one is mass migrating to Brazil. No one is I mean, if there's this mass migration, they'd be going everywhere, and it's not happening. Europe has actually closed its borders with in some ways. So, and particularly Eastern European countries, there's not that mass wave out of Syria, which occurred because of the war. That's pretty much tapered off. The only mass migration happening on the planet right now is into the United States because the door has been thrown wide open, and Mayorkas has said, come on. And the cartels have exploited it. They get the money and traffic the people across the country, or across Latin America. When the people arrive, they concentrate them at the crossing sites, overwhelming Border Patrol, and then they sneak their nefarious individuals and the narcotics around them, and it's destroying the country. And Mayorkas knows this. I mean, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, working for Joe Biden, said as much in testimony almost a year ago, or actually more than a year ago. And Mayorkas, 6-8 months ago, tried to deny he knew about this cartel strategy exploiting his policies. He can't not know it now. This is intentional. They want to fundamentally change the electorate in the country, and they think they can do it, and they're paying the price. They think it's worth the price, I guess. We're going to get him out of office.
Yeah, it's so brazen. I mean, Mayorkas is acting like it's not my fault we have all these magnets, really, because you're the guy who said that being here illegally is not a basis for deportation. That's on record, Mayorkas saying that.
100%. I forget who told me this, and I quoted it in my hearing, but if there's a college town and there's a college town bar, it might have been you, Vince, I don't know, but if the guy's not carded, there'll be a line out the door for that bar. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what we've got now, and they're pouring in. It's just escalated ever since they've been in office, and it's going to continue until we implement some policies that will stop it.
I don't know if there's any better example of the fact that they're trying to make it worse than the fact that they keep ordering the Border Patrol to cut open the concertina wire that Texas is laying down. Because, Mayorkas said yesterday on that interview with Brett, he said, we're trying to stop this. We've asked Mexico to enforce their southern border. We want to slow the flow of all of these people. Really? Because when Texas erects barriers, you break them open.
Yes, and he designed the CBP One app to basically make it easy to come into the country. If the cartel member adds a little extra fee to the coyote fee and fills out the form for them, they get to come right in the country. It's like automatic parole. 95.8% of those who fill out that app, which was nothing but a shell game, they just come in. Everything he's done is doubled down on the open door. He has not implemented a single policy that would stop people.
Do you get the sense that your fellow Republican lawmakers are with you on impeaching Mayorkas? Do you think we'll see a unanimous vote to do that?
I don't know about a unanimous vote because there's one individual who just, his concepts of what impeachment means to me isn't historically accurate. So I don't know where he'll be, but I think we'll get the majority. I mean, we're working those there were 8 that voted against, the privileged motion. I've talked to all of those. Most of them, the vast majority, were like, look, we just want a due process. You're doing an investigation. Let's wait to the end of the investigation, which now it's over and we're moving into impeachment. But I think we get most of those guys. Look, we have a thin majority. So hopefully, and I'm going to go meet with a couple of Democrats and say, look, I mean, you can wear this into the election if you want to, but it's a big, ugly pile of you know what. And, how about voting with us to get rid of Mayorkas?
Yeah, you would think they would. I mean, especially some of these border Democrats, they represent districts that are taking the brunt of this right now. They've previously signaled immense discontent with the Biden administration and what's happening. Can you envision a Democrat crossing the aisle to support the impeachment calls?
Cuellar might. I mean, he's like that Dean Phillips might. I mean, he's running for president. I don't know if he wants to make that bold of a statement, but there are several out there that I think they certainly feel the same way we do. I've had Democrats tell me it's a humanitarian crisis. I've had them tell me Mayorkas should have been fired. So we'll see. I mean, clearly the governor of Massachusetts, the mayor of New York City, the mayor of these liberal cities are sick and tired of what's happening. They want to blame it on Texas for busing, but Texas's busing is about 3% of the busing that happens into New York City, maybe 6% at most. The vast majority are DHS busing people all over.
Yeah. By the way, you said Democrats. You mean Democrat lawmakers have told you they think Alejandro Mayorkas should have been fired?
Yeah, I have had a Democrat lawmaker tell me that after Afghanistan, Biden should have fired a few generals, and he should have fired Mayorkas a long time ago.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. He definitely should have. So we'll see. On the busing front, you're in a good position to answer this question. The left keeps on saying that Greg Abbott and others are forcing all of these migrants to go to these Democrat sanctuary cities. My impression has been that the illegals who cross into the United States, they are told where these buses are going, that they have agency over whether or not they get on the bus and what city they're going to. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. The Texans at least ask them and have them sign a form. Where do you want to go? And they bus them where they want to go. So this lawsuit from the federal government is going to fail because those individuals have all signed forms saying that's where they want to go. And the federal government's doing it again, probably 96% of the total. So it's absurd that they're going to turn around and sue Texas for doing it. And it's absurd that the Democrats want to say it's all Governor Abbott. It is not.
Right. There's a lot of federal money going into human trafficking right now. Do we have a sense of just how much? And it looks like these non-government organizations, to include Catholic charities, are really, taking all this money and enabling this human trafficking into the country.
Yeah, the NGOs, and there are some NGOs that do good work, but there are some NGOs who are facilitating the human trafficking and are facilitating these people coming, and it serves as an incentive, and so they come, and the NGOs give them food and legal advice, and then put them on a bus, and it's incentivizing this mass wave of migration that Mayorkas is talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so what does the impeachment hearing actually look like next week for you? Are we going to see specific articles of impeachment? Are we going to see some witnesses? What'll take place?
So there will be witnesses, and we're kind of holding off on announcing who those are yet. But we've got some hearings lined up, and then we'll mark up articles of impeachment. I think that's as much as I really want to say right now.
Okay.
But we've got a 5-phase report that's out there from the investigation that details the financial cost, the human cost, the dereliction of duty, the violations of the law, and et cetera. It's out there, and it's public right now on the committee webpage.
Got it. Well, one thing that stands out to me about Mayorkas' tenure, in addition to allowing the border to collapse and aiding and abetting it, is the treatment of the Border Patrol. That horsewhipping scandal where Mayorkas straight up lied to the American people, slandered the men and women who work under him, and knew better. That was disgraceful, and I think the basis of another article, if possible.
Well, clearly lying to the American people.
Yeah.
He lied to the American people, and that's a breach of trust. So I'm sure that'll be in the list.
All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Congressman Mark Green, thanks for heading down to the border, checking out what's happening there, and for sticking it to these guys. Hopefully something good comes of it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Vince. Have a great day. Thanks for having me on.
You too. All right. It's, Congressman Mark Green again, chair of the Homeland Security Committee, and he represents Tennessee's 7th. He was at the border earlier this week alongside some 60 Republican congressmen, and this is what Mark Green had to say while he was there.
Every state and city in this country is a border state, but I want to say a special thank you and salute to Texas. You have borne the brunt of this, and we will not let you down. Accountability is coming, I promise.
Accountability is coming, I promise. We will not let you down. And Texas, I'm glad Congressman Green could clarify this a bit for us, because I really just reiterate for us, because I did know that these illegals, when they arrive, they do choose the buses that they get on. But the left keeps on insisting, how dare you send people out to Washington, D.C., or how dare you send them to Chicago or New York or New Jersey? It's like, well, wait a second. All these people are coming of their own volition. They know where the buses are going. They're getting aboard them, and they're going because they want to go to those locations. Texas is saying, hey, if you're going to force this to be our problem, we're going to make it your problem. And you got sanctuary cities all across the country, you Democrats. You said you would welcome anybody. Turns out that was a lie, just like so many things that the left expresses. They didn't want to welcome people. In fact, they're freaking out that people are arriving. And, of course, exploiting their arrival as a basis to demand more money from taxpayers. Please give us more money. We have to handle all of this, so we just need more resources. Cut us checks. It's amazing. In Chicago, there's an alderman by the name of Brian Hopkins, and he was on the Fox News channel this week. And he was asked about all of this. And he said yesterday that he regrets Chicago becoming a sanctuary city. He regrets that. He was asked by Sandra Smith, who's the host, with all due respect, didn't leadership in your city say, we are a sanctuary city, all are welcome? Wasn't that the message? And he replies, yes, you're not hearing that from me. You know, I think if we had to vote all over again on authorization for whether Chicago is going to be a sanctuary city, I'm not sure we would be, he said. In fact, we tried to put a referendum on the ballot in March coming up to ask the voters, do you want to be a sanctuary city? And the mayor and his team blocked that effort. Ooh, look at that. So Mayor Johnson, is it right? Mayor Johnson of Chicago is complaining to no end. Oh, my goodness, we can't take all these illegals. What's going on? He doesn't say illegals. And he blocked an effort to make Chicago not a sanctuary city. So this gives away some elements of the game. They are just demanding money. And as Mark Green just pointed out, you know, a lot of this has to do with meddling in the elections, too, whether it's the active votes or the future votes of illegals or just using the bodies to pad the numbers for the Electoral College or for the House of Representatives. But either way, there's nonsense afoot. And so the mayor and his team blocked an effort to stop Chicago from abandoning its sanctuary city status. The Chicago alderman, Democrat Brian Hopkins, continued. He said, so we don't know if there's political will to continue being a sanctuary city, but I will say this. Our status as a sanctuary city first was established way back in the 80s. This is not new. We put this flag in the ground a long time ago. No one at that time had any idea that it would lead to this today. This was completely unpredicted, and it's completely unprecedented, and nobody thought a sanctuary city would mean what it means. Well, you'd have to be a moron then. We'll take anybody. We won't deport you. We won't hold you accountable. We won't cooperate with federal law enforcement. We won't enforce the law, Chicago proudly declared. And now they're living with the consequences of their own actions. A call coming in from Sue, who's in Damascus. Now line 6. Sue, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Hi, good afternoon and Happy New Year.
Same to you, Sue.
And I want to ask you a question, Vince. Listening to you about the sanctuary cities, which of course everyone knows is ridiculous,
yeah,
and the amount of illegals. But over here in Maryland, where I live, how does the FBI, how does Congress allow the FBI's new headquarters to be built in Prince George's County, Maryland, at the cost of millions, maybe billions of dollars, into a jurisdiction that is openly violating federal law? They love the fact that they're a sanctuary jurisdiction. They refuse to follow federal law.
Yes.
So how do you put the nation's law enforcement headquarters into a place that's allowing federal law to be broken on a daily basis?
That is such a good question, Sue. You're right. Prince George's County is a sanctuary county, which means that they give double-barrel middle fingers to federal law enforcement. It's an abusive relationship, you see. The feds groveling. Oh, we'll build our headquarters there. Yeah, it is preposterous and a part of the ongoing incoherence of the left. Thank you, Sue, for pointing that out. Coming up, Gabe Kaminsky from the Washington Examiner joins us. We'll talk about the dark money that's involved in all of this ballot rigging going on across the country in real time.